Welcome to the Materials Evolution Podcast International Women's Day Special in association with JEC. Joining us today, we have four prominent women from the world of composites. These are Clare Baker, Segment Manager, Space and Communications at Torre, Sue Halliwell, Operations Manager at Composites UK, Marty Offner, Founder of Composites One, and Anne Bertherow, Vice President Innovation of Owens Corning. And as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Gemma Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. So I'm just going to let you all do a little introduction, just, tell us a little bit about yourself. So I'll start with you, Claire.
Hi, it's nice to be here again, answering questions about women in engineering, which women in engineering tend to be asked a lot. So, but actually, I graduated in '98 with a master's in composite materials research. I spent about 8 years in research and development as a materials engineer in various aerospace companies. And then for the last part of my career, probably about 12 years or so, I've been more on the commercial side. And now I'm a segment manager, which means I'm tracking markets and looking for new business opportunities in the space and communications, like radio frequency communications sector.
Excellent. Thank you. Marcy?
Yes, good morning. I'm Marcy Offner. I am the Director of Marketing Communications here at Composites One, and I have been in the composites industry for about 23 years. So most of my career has been spent working in composites, and while I'm not exactly an engineer, I can make a part in a pinch if I'm asked to. So over the years, I have acquired both technical and commercial experience, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the evolving role of women in our industry. Thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you. Sue?
Hi, I'm Sue Halliwell, Operations Manager at Composites UK. I graduated in the late 80s in chemistry and started my career at the Building Research Establishment as a research scientist, looking at durability of plastic glazing materials across different construction applications. I was very fortunate. They sponsored me to do a master's and a PhD in polymer technology. I left there after about 17 happy years and worked for a company called Net Composites for a few years as a knowledge transfer manager. And then from there, became the first employee at Composites UK just over 9 years ago now. And the team has now grown, and there's 8 of us in the team, and we're the trade association that represent the UK composite sector. So we've got a really diverse range of member companies that we represent, from the glass fibre side to the high technology carbon fibre end of things as well, and everybody in between, and all the service providers into the sector. So it's a really exciting company to work for.
And you, Anne?
Yes, good morning, everybody. So I am Anne Bertherow, currently leading innovation for Owens Corning, the composite business. So I have an engineer background with a PhD in glass science, and I've been working around glass and composite industry for the last 3 decades already, for many 3 big corporates, and the last one, Owens Corning. So I'm so energized with that really topic of women in engineering, because we try to build a very inclusive, really work environment right now, and we need really to attract a really female in our composite value chain. So really, I'm very happy about that podcast today.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. What made you choose composites as a career or study path, Anne?
Really, it was really my interest for science started in high school, and I'm convinced we need really to capture attention of really ladies from this high school. I was fortunate to meet there a very passionate physics and chemistry teacher who really did open the field of opportunities in engineering. So it was really by chance, and then really much more natural path of engineering and liking the science.
Excellent. I'm going to ask the same question to you, Marcy, because I know you had a different path into the industry.
I did. So my very first job was in the automotive industry. And while it was an exciting industry to work in, I didn't always feel like I had a voice. So I started to look for another opportunity, and I came across a company called GLS Composites Distribution, which ultimately became Composites One. What attracted me to the industry at the time was that the composites industry was already at the forefront of putting composite materials in wind and in aerospace. And I really was excited about the opportunity to work for a company that was at least having some impact on the future of how we make parts and make them more environmentally friendly and impact the environment. And happily, the company itself has turned out to be a culture where I've really been able to thrive. I've found my voice here, and I'm continually challenged. And really, if there's something I want to do, I ask to do it, and I'm usually given the opportunity. So it's been a great place for me to land. And obviously, I have stayed here for a long time. So I must be doing something right, and they must be doing something right. So it was just a natural transition for me from a manufacturing to another manufacturing environment.
Yeah, sure. Claire?
Hi. So I have to say it wasn't an obvious choice for me. So when I was at school, I was very good at creative writing. I had poems published in The Independent, and it was actually my English teacher who said to me, you're a good all-rounder. I was pretty academic at school. She said, you'll make more money if you go into the science side of things. She said, you can always come back to this creativity. I don't know. I was actually encouraged from a very practical perspective that it was a really good career in terms of being employed, job security, and a need for engineers and engineering. And at first I had wanted to study medicine, and I did a lot of work experience in hospitals, but I was always sort of interested in radiology and radiography, and it's like the industrial side of medicine. And actually, I ended up going to Queen Mary University of London and studying biomedical material sciences, like a bridge between medicine and engineering. And I did some studies on hip replacements and things like that. And then I took another practical decision when I studied for my master's, and I enjoyed the topics that I'd done in my degree course. And I thought, I could do polymers or I could do composites. Composites looks like a good industry to be a part of. Like, I don't know, I was obsessed with job security when I was young. But actually, yeah, so that kind of pulled me into the industry. But I think I've like always been curious about things. And the one thing that I love about working in this field, and still, 23 or so years into my career, I'm always learning about things and applying that in my job. So that's what pulled me into it.
I think you bring up a really good point, actually, because the one thing I always, worry that they don't actually talk to children about at schools is job security and the chance of getting a job. And, and sometimes we put, children off certain careers, without really thinking about that. But yeah. So Sue, sorry, over to you.
I'm a little bit like Anne, actually. It was my chemistry teacher at school that really inspired me to follow chemistry. I hadn't quite twigged that meant doing physics as an A-level, which did find quite a challenge, I have to say. Yeah, I don't regret it at all. And going to Reading University, I did my chemistry degree. I hadn't really thought about what path I was going to take, and did the milk round, as in what was the way we got jobs in those days. Had various interviews and that sort of thing, and ended up working at building research establishment, which was actually quite near my parents, but that was coincidence more than anything, and worked in the building industry in durability of plastic materials, which I hadn't really thought about the fact that it might be very male dominated, because at school it was fairly mixed in terms of numbers of girls and boys doing sciences. But I was suddenly in a very male-dominated environment and very young, and it was quite challenging, I have to say, in the late 80s as a female in that sector. And it was one of the reasons that I did do my master's and then my PhD, to kind of give myself a little bit of extra credibility, because I went to numerous conferences and technical meetings where I was the only female. And that continued for a number of years. It has got better. Yeah, it was quite an eye-opening experience, let's put it that way, in those days.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that, because I went to an all-girls school. So to me, everybody did every subject, and we just split it up, and it was all girls. So I never really had this idea that boys were better or more interested, or any subject, because I didn't actually see any. But yeah, okay, over to you, Graham.
I've always found it quite interesting, really, because you always see the stats. I don't know if it's the same in the States or in France, but certainly in the UK, that girls consistently outperform boys when it comes to STEM subjects. So you'd think that would naturally lead to more women in the engineering workplace, but for whatever reason, we're not capturing those girls. For whatever reason, they're dropping out from having really good potential to not finding a way into our workplace. So that's something we certainly do need to tackle. I mean, the stat that you keep hearing that 1/8 of engineers in the workplace are female is just ridiculous when you consider all things like that. On that basis then, since you made your choice to move into the field of engineering and particularly composites, have you found any barriers since you made that decision personally or an education or career point of view? And I think the best place to start really is Sue, as you were the one who said that you did find a challenge in the first when you came into the sector.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I don't think I was really having in front of me any barrier or obstacle, because from the beginning, 30 years ago, entering engineering school, I was part of the less 10% of female in the class. So I guess from the beginning, it was normal to really study with really much more a male dominant environment. And so do I when I started working my first job in R&D and then in operation, glass company, glass manufacturing, you don't have any woman. So not really an obstacle. And I think what was so important for me is to be seen as an impactful engineer. And I was considering really my really colleagues are much more like colleagues, and so it was neither an advantage, neither a drawback to be a woman. So I think you live with it. I think today, Sue told probably us that it's a completely different work environment. We have more women in the composite industry. In my team currently, we are above 25-30% of women in R&D. It was not like that 30 years ago, so we managed with it, but it was not at all neither really a barrier, neither an advantage.
Sue, is there anything to follow up with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was challenging in that generally I would be the only female in situations. With my peers of a similar age, there weren't any issues. It tended to be kind of the older guys that treated you a little bit like a little girl at times. But certainly, as I've gone through my career, that has changed so much. I mean, I'm now one of the older generation, so my peers would be in trouble if they did treat me like that these days. Yeah, things have certainly changed, and I think you have to look back at what we were watching on TV as well in those days. It was very different to what we watch now, and what was deemed to be acceptable behaviour is so, frowned upon now, and everybody's much better educated in terms of, we are all equal and we should all be treated equally, regardless of whether you're male, female, what country you're from, what language you speak. So things have certainly moved forward, and in a relatively short period of time as well.
I must admit, I'm staggered sometimes at how much things that have moved forward, even during my lifetime. Going back 20 years ago, it was very much, these are girls' jobs, these are boys' jobs, girls play with this, boys play with that. That seems to have gone on together now. And having a daughter myself, I think it's fantastic that the message out there that girls can do anything. Marty?
I was just going to say that I think one of the challenges that our industry in particular faces is we don't communicate enough to the industry that women are welcome and that you can do the same thing as the guy sitting next to you can do. If you go out into even the shops where things are being made, you see a lot of women making parts and spraying up and, gel coating and doing clothes molding and doing all the things that ultimately go out to the consumer. And I think maybe it's a PR issue with the composites industry because it is kind of an old-fashioned, unique industry that we haven't done the best job of communicating out to young girls who are graduating with science degrees and engineering degrees and even business degrees, that there is a place for you in the composites industry. And you can really, composites are going to become so much more important as the world becomes more environmentally attuned to what we need to keep the world going, right, in the future. And there's a lot of opportunities here for young women and more mature women who have had careers elsewhere to come and make an impact. So I think how we solve that problem is through community organizations, through composites industry organizations, spreading the word about the opportunities. But I think that's probably been a big challenge for attracting more women to our industry overall.
As we're on you, Marcy, did you find any barriers once you got into the composites industry that you experienced?
Well, I mean, like Sue, I would go into the boardroom and it'd be filled with men and there'd be me. And I remember very early on in my career here at Composites One, my boss invited me to a meeting in particular because of some expertise I had. And we went into the meeting, and before the meeting started, he asked me to go get coffee. And I remember thinking, but what? I'm not the coffee getter. I am the marketing manager here to provide some expertise. So I handled it gracefully, got the coffee. We had the meeting. I said my bit and made my contribution. And then after the meeting, I just had a conversation with him. And I said, I realized you needed coffee in that moment, and you were trying to entertain your meeting guests, but it really wasn't appropriate that you asked me to do that. And this is how it made me feel. So I think the important thing for women to remember is you have a voice, and just make sure you communicate what your needs are. And sometimes it's just a pure lack of sensitivity to the situation that might make you feel uncomfortable. So since then, whenever I feel a barrier in a room that I might be the only woman, I just try to remember that I have a unique set of skills, and that's the reason why I'm there, and I use my voice. That's how I gain respect. And if I don't get the respect as a result of that, then either I walk away knowing I tried, or it just wasn't the right place for me to be at that time. But remembering who you are and what your skills are can really help you overcome those barriers.
I think that's a fantastic way of looking at it. I mean, you're in that room for a reason, so you should own it, really. Claire, can you tell us about your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's like everyone said, it's a male-dominated environment. And when I started out, I was working a lot with people on the shop floor. In fact, the first company that I worked at, that was part of their sort of process, was they put you to work in the factory for 3 weeks. And I think they thought that, you needed to be there so that you understood what people were doing. And in fact, I only worked there for 1 week because they realized that actually I'd had a lot of different jobs. And I'd already worked in factories, so I was fine. I just got on with everybody straight away. So I think they really felt graduates didn't understand what it was like to work in a factory, and then they saw me and they thought, "Oh no, she's fine. She can come back into the R&D office." But yeah, it is a hugely male-dominated environment, and I hear what Anne is saying about there being, and Marcy, about there being a lot more operators. But actually, on the shop floor in Langley Mill, where we manufacture pre-preg, I can tell you that it's very much male-dominated still on the manufacturing floor. So, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. And I honestly, I get a bit fed up about being asked about being a woman in engineering, because I've never been a man in engineering. So I don't really know what the different perspective is or how to answer the question sometimes. I'm also an identical twin, and sometimes I don't know how to answer that common question. What's it like being an identical twin? I've always been one, so I don't really know what to say. But yeah, I think you need to assert yourself a bit more. I mean, and you shouldn't have to, but sometimes you have to answer a technical question early on in a meeting. People know that you've got the right background to be there. There can be the sort of the opposite thing. You're talking about going into a room and knowing you've got the right skill set. But there's also that slight paranoia of, have I just been invited or taken to this board level because I'm a woman and they want more women? Or am I really qualified for this? Because I only want to be here if I'm fully qualified for this and I'm here on my merits and not because of my sex. So, yeah, I struggle a bit with this whole topic sometimes.
I think that's the difficulty with the whole positive discrimination debate, isn't it? Is that it can lead to people feeling that they don't deserve to be there. And I can see you've got something you want to say.
Yeah, yes. What Claire was sharing did resonate to me. I think female, whatever senior or early career, when they are in the room, they should feel legitimate. if they are in the room because we need a woman in the room, it's better to leave. So usually we are there, our other really like business partners, other people, because we are providing a certain skill set, certain expertise. We are legitimate. So there is a behavior to have, not to accept to be the one only woman because a company is looking after diversity, just being the right voice for the right meeting. And that would change the conversation.
I mean, from my point of view, when it comes to the female colleagues in my organization, they 100% merit where they are. We've got some fantastic women who work with me, and I can't speak highly enough of them, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's a question of, do us men deserve to be in the same room as them because they're so good? Coming from the male perspective then, do you feel that as men in engineering and in the composites industry, we do enough to make women feel welcome, or is there too much lad banter, should you say, in amongst it? And do you sometimes feel that you have to outperform your male counterparts to get the same level of recognition? Marcy, do you want to start with that one?
Over the course of my career, I have felt that I've had to outperform many of my male counterparts to get the recognition that I guess I feel that I deserve with, my talents and my skills. But what I've come to understand over, at least for me personally, over my career, is that I am a woman and I can do the same things as my male counterparts, but I also have a certain set of qualities that men maybe don't have in as great of abundance as a woman. So I sort of feel like women and men complement each other, and where I might bring a certain passion or compassion even to a project, a man might bring more of the logical, this is what needs to be done, type of list. And together we work well together and have a successful outcome. I still do many times feel I have to work a little harder and speak a little louder sometimes to get a point across in a meeting, or I have to work a little harder to keep my emotions in check just by the nature of being a woman. Sometimes our emotions are a little bit closer to our throat than maybe a man when they speak. Overall, I feel that I've learned to leverage what makes me unique as a woman. And when I manage projects or I manage my team, I feel like that's what's made me successful and respected. And I never, going back to what Anne was saying, if you're the only woman because you're the token, I look at that as an opportunity. Maybe I am the token in that moment, but when I leave, I want to leave knowing that what I said and what I offered to that discussion makes them think not about me being a woman in the room, but somebody who has experience and skills and the know-how to help a project be successful. So maybe I can be the pioneer that is the only woman now, but in 5 years, maybe there might be 3 or 4 women in that discussion. So I look at it as an opportunity. It's not always easy, but I like to take advantage of those opportunities.
Claire, what's your...
I was just enjoying listening to Marty then. I've worked in various different companies actually. So I'm currently at Toray Advanced Composites. Before that, I worked very briefly for a Chinese organization. And before that, I was in Sumitomo Corporation, which was a Japanese company. Before that, I moved around in engineering roles because it was a very kind of unstable time for British engineering through sort of the 2000s, and a lot of business was being offshored. But what I found was once I was in an organization as a materials engineer, then that was fine. I didn't experience discrimination that I remember as an engineer. Marcy was saying that you do have a slightly different skill set. And what I've always found is that people talk to me. Maybe I'm a bit too chatty, but I just, when I was on the shop floor, quite often I had to do troubleshooting. And we had a part for a satellite blower part. It was a cyanate ester composite. And people who know cyanate esters will understand that if there's any moisture present during cure, it will preferentially polymerize with the cyanate ester polymer, and you actually get what are called carbamates forming. And then if you then post-cool your part, then those carbonates will generate carbon dioxide, which literally can blow the part apart. So we started this investigation. How could this happen? We were drying all the tools, we were drying all the honeycomb core. And I popped down to have a chat with the guys on the shop floor, and he was like, oh yeah, the roof's leaking again. So we've got this bucket here to catch. Yeah. And I found that out because they would talk to me. They didn't see me as intimidating. I wasn't one of the engineers coming down to find out what they'd done wrong. They were just talking to me about what was happening on the shop floor, and that we'd had this problem with the roof, and obviously it completely affected the quality of a satellite part.
I guess that being easy to talk to, and I find women easier to talk to as well. It does allow for those conversations where things like that would come out, where elsewhere they might decide to hide it away. So I think there's definitely something to be said about that.
Yeah, it's helped me in my sales roles too, because people are very open about what they're working on, and they sort of more able to talk to you about it. Yeah, I found that to be an advantage, but sort of a disadvantage in a way, because maybe it's perceived, I don't know, as a lack of authority, or people are not intimidated by you. But I've always, especially in sales, printed my qualifications on my business cards, so that when I hand that over, people know straight away that I've got a background in engineering. And I only really felt I had to do that once I got into sales, but it certainly facilitates a better level of conversation because it goes straight into the technical side of things.
But I think the way that modern management theory is going anyway, it's fear is more of a bad thing. So I think not having to worry about people being scared of you is a good thing, really.
I worked within really French and American corporates, so very, very different in terms of culture. And for both, really, both type of corporate, I don't think it was expected for my leaders to outperform or to work harder than my male colleagues. I had perhaps unconscious behavior to invest more, to push really to raise the bar, to prove myself and to prove others I would be capable. And I think it became a little bit more intense when, especially, I got two kids. I have two kids. I'm fortunate to have two kids, so I had to manage both my professional and family life for a while, and I didn't want to give up. So perhaps there is no true expectation from really corporate leadership, the male should do more, should outperform. But I think it's just natural behavior for most of really engineers, to be willing to manage both as better as possible. So definitively, it's something now I try to share with really my team members, is that everybody has to find the right balance, really professional and work-life balance. And there is time for hard work together with the team, and there is time from family, and we are a team. So no prejudice, no expectation, just most of the women, we want to be A performer or A+. And sometimes it's too much. So it's always better when you have a mentor or coach who start telling you okay, there is no need to raise the bar every day, every minute.
I think one thing you did say there that I feel that we haven't touched on at all is kids. There is an expectation for women that they have to balance being a good mother and being good at their job, whereas with men, it's just be good at your job. There's not that pressure to be there for your children in the same way as there is for women. And I think I feel the companies don't recognise that enough. Personally, do enough to make things flexible enough for women on that front.
I think today it's probably different. In most of the corporate, it's truly maternity leave for sure. You have to be out, but you can work from home, or you can manage, you can prepare, you can delegate to others. And I think I see more and more really male team members in my team taking some really parental leave. Versus really probably 10 years ago, I didn't have that. But even 2 weeks ago, I had really a male colleague who asked for taking this parental leave, and I think we should celebrate that. because that will
100%.
help women really like to come back to work more quietly, having really like somebody else from the family taking over. But it's truly a transformation of really like the society about really like how do we manage really the maternity leave, and there is no disruption today.
I think that's 100% right. If we want to deliver true equality, we need men to be comfortable in taking up those childcare roles just as much as women taking up the engineering roles. It's a two-way street. So,
yeah, I totally agree with Anne. I think things have changed dramatically, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years. My generation is very much expected that, you could carry on working, but you were the main provider of childcare when you had a family. But certainly in my situation, I think I found it quite tricky going from full-time to part-time hours when I had my son. I was in the middle of doing my PhD at the time as well, so it was quite a balancing act. And I think the part-time hour thing has been more of a challenge than actually being female. There's still a little bit of a perception that if you're a part-time worker, that you don't bring as much value somehow as a full-time worker to a company, regardless of whether you're male or female, I think, and regardless of probably what sector you're in. But I've certainly come across that I kind of had to prove myself as a part-time worker probably more than as a female as I've got older. That actually I can do the job, and most part-time workers, I work 4 days a week, so in effect I do 5 days worth of work in 4. But I think that's been more of a challenge going forward as I've got older, in perception of kind of more senior managers, perhaps, that if you're part-time then it's not quite as serious maybe as a full-time. It's very strange. I don't know if anyone else has had that. I guess, are you guys part-time, full-time workers?
I was for a while. So when I got my second kids, I was for 3 years, like 4 days a week. But I was fortunate because I didn't change job. So I probably working more than 4 days a week. But I keep my job. I was really fortunate to have several really leaders, male leaders, that didn't care about how, when, and I was working, just really executing projects, work with the team, empowering the team, and rely on each other. And there is one part of your career when you need more time for yourself, your family, and probably a few years after you do the same for others. So I think at the end of the day, it's but I agree that there could be still this prejudice about part-time, whatever the gender.
I think that the other thing that women face is with elder care, taking care of our parents as they age. And it does seem to fall a lot on women. So that's a challenge that maybe women face later on in their career, where they're more established, but all of a sudden their kids are raised, they're, gone off on their own or whatever. But now you're faced with an aging parent that needs care. And there is that delicate balance of maintaining the momentum you have with your career, but also caring for that person that cared for you your whole life, right? So I think that there are those challenges. I do think that the pandemic might have helped some of this for women and men, because I think when we were all kind of forced to be home, we came to appreciate what the other's role was in childcare and elder care, and how that balance. I mean, in America, a lot of women had to leave the workforce. So the unemployment here is now at pre-pandemic levels. We still haven't found a way to get women back to work because it has changed the dynamic. Someone had to stay home. It was expected of women. Some men left the workforce too for childcare or elder care reasons. So I think those are things that are just realities of a woman's role, maybe more so than men, and that employers need to be sensitive to those things. As a woman advances in her career, she might also face taking care of parents after she's already kind of gone through the whole childcare thing. So I do think the pandemic might help companies become more sensitive to that. I know my company is becoming more sensitive to that, and how can we keep our women employees happy and satisfied, but allow them to do the things that they need to do at home.
I think the pandemic has certainly helped with flexibility of working. I feel that it's given companies that trust that people, when left to their own devices, work from home, will work from home. And you're right, they called it a she session in the UK because the amount of women who left the workplace disproportionate to men rather than a recession. It was the loss of female talent from the workplace. I think it just really brings it to the fore how important this topic is right now.
So I'm child free by choice, and I'm well into my 40s now. So, and actually 1 in 5 women are not having children anymore. And I think there will be a societal shift. We've got 7.9 billion humans here. We don't need to be having big families. I just, and I think more and more people, and not just, maybe I took that decision very early on, but I think that especially in millennials and Gen Z, they're deciding not to have children for the state of the planet. So maybe it will become less of an issue. But if you don't have children, it's very much in this whole discussion we've seen here. It's like that is what you need your time off and your flexibility for. So if you're not the one who has kids, you make way for people to take their holidays in half terms and school holidays. And it's not perceived as important or as important the things that you do outside the workplace with your spare time. So yeah, I understand what Sue is saying about part-time work, but I also see the other side is that I've always worked full-time. I'm always there 5 days a week. And it does make a difference if somebody isn't there on the Friday or the Monday. They're less a part of things. I don't know how you get around that, because it's fundamentally true that you're not there for this 5-day working week that we've still established. Maybe we need everything to slosh around a bit more and not have these set hours, that everybody should have this flexibility within the workplace and contribute to the workplace, but it's not a culture of presenteeism and heads in the office. So yeah, the pandemic has probably helped with that.
I think it's easy to say about the culture of presenteeism, and you're 100% right there. It's the people who are perceived to be there more regularly are the ones who tend to go up the corporate ladder. But I think we also have to recognise the fact that there's a lot of people who it's impossible for them to have this flexibility because they're doing the manual jobs. They have to be there at 9 to 5 because that's when the machines are operating. They can't take those machines home with them.
But then we're seeing more and more automation. We're going towards a society where there's not going to be as much employment for everybody because we've automated a lot of processes. We're doing it in our industry where some, 5 people might have been employed to make a part. Now it's AFP or ATL layup. You only need one person to operate the machine. What are we going to do in the future? In our industry and in other industries, are we going to implement a universal income? Are we going to accept that actually this 9 to 5, Monday to Friday type model isn't necessary anymore for people? So it's going to change in the future. I think we're already moving towards it.
Oh, of course it will. Of course it will. I think as well that there has to be a way we look at automation as well, because in the UK we're awfully guilty of automation. We think, okay, that robot can do the job of 5 people, so we can get rid of 4. Whereas in Germany, the attitude is that robot can do the job of 5 people. We've got 5 people, therefore we can quintuple our productivity. So,
yeah, or you start taxing the robots in the same way as you would a person in the job. I mean, there's a lot of models that are being proposed in this workplace that we're moving towards.
Mm-hmm. But in any case, that conversation really shows that it's so important really for young female in really high school or in college really to really study science and engineering, because the job will change in the short term. There will be a need really to be more really comfortable with data management, automation, and so on. And it will be less manual and based on really the strengths and more really type of jobs that will require some skills and skill sets that everybody could learn, could study. So it's so important that we keep on pushing really the female really in the STEM really and not see what is important in France at all. I don't know if it is really the same trend everywhere, but in France we see more and more really female taking some entering medical school. And probably in 10 years from now, we will have more than 50-60% of our doctors that will be female. And we don't have really that trend for really physics and chemistry and composite. So I think we need to reflect about how do we switch, because we have people going too much for science, but not really like the material science that we need.
I think from an outside view, I've seen maybe the software engineering industries do more to encourage, female engineers than I have kind of our own industry. But then I do think maybe that's because we do have quite a big skill shortage within the composites industry, and actually, our biggest worry is getting people into the industry rather than really worrying about what gender they are or where they're from. As a whole, we just need to promote the industry. But yeah, that kind of takes on to our next question. I think we've kind of covered it a little bit. Have we seen an evolution within our industries, our countries, our companies when it comes to women in engineering? Have we, or have we, like I say, are we just still looking to encourage anyone into the industry?
I think we have seen a shift. I think what you say, Gemma, is absolutely spot on. There is a massive skill shortage across science and technology anyway. Composites fitting into that, and I think attracting youngsters into the industry has seemed to become increasingly difficult, regardless of whether they're coming in at 16 on apprenticeships, 18 on apprenticeships, or at degree level as graduates. And I think we do need to do something on how we address that and get more youngsters in. I think the opportunities for whether you're male or female are equal these days. I don't think there's any barriers for anyone coming in. If you're the right person coming into a role, then it really isn't a part to play whether you're a male or a female for that. But I do think we really do need to address how we can attract youngsters into the composite sector, because it really is an exciting industry moving forward. And I think it was Marty said, it's going to play an absolutely critical role in every country hitting the net zero targets. Composites are going to be absolutely critical moving forward. So it's going to be a sector that's around for a long time, and it's really progressing at a rapid rate. But it is about attracting young people in and attracting people back into the sector. I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. I can't remember who it was that mentioned it, about attracting women coming back into the industry who've perhaps been off on maternity leave or taken a career break, which is still relatively common. How can we attract them back into the sector to come into some of the more exciting roles that are developing and utilize the skill sets that they had, some retraining perhaps, to help them get up to speed, because it is moving at a rapid rate. Get them back up to speed, kind of reintroduce them into the workplace in more managerial type roles and more exciting positions moving forward. I think there's quite a lot of work to do, but I think there are some huge opportunities that we could address if we manage to find a way of doing it.
Yeah, totally. Do you have anything to add to that, Claire?
Yeah, sure. It's something we quite often speak about. There are various forums addressing this huge growth in the composites industry, and the government has published data about it. And then on the other side, there's this like wailing gap of like, we haven't got enough graduates coming through or anyone apprenticeships to address the skills shortage in the industry. So I don't know what the answer is apart from getting more publicity out. But I know that one thing that we have discussed on the board of the British Composite Society with the Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining is that that we're a bit worried about this whole anti-plastics movement, and we think that the public is being swayed and influenced against plastics and polymers, because obviously it's a big issue that there are issues surrounding recycling and microplastics pollution, but we don't think that is sufficiently offset against the argument that, hey, these materials are saving so much weight and energy that because they're saving weight, that it massively offsets this other problem, which we're working on. We will solve that, and we need people in to help us solve that issue. So I think there's a PR campaign to go forward with composites.
To follow Claire fully, I fully echo Claire. So there is huge growth in our composite value chain, and I think beyond growth, I think we are really answering very important question. Really like to build a sustainable future for our world. So composite industry, it's renewable energy. So wind blades are made of really composite. It's automotive, really. It's all regarding transportation. It's infrastructure. So with composite material, we are touching really all the end segment application where there is a need truly like to think really sustainability, to think green, to find some technical solution to become carbon neutral, to find some recycling really like options. So there are a lot of really like technical challenges, and here we are welcoming the growth, really like so energized, interesting like technical challenges, and then we are welcoming really a diverse really like type of teams. So female, male, really from different backgrounds, from different culture. This is how we will win. And so it's really the best time to be within the composite industry, because one day, for 1 year, you could work on renewable energy. And the year after, you want to work on infrastructure to make better road with recycled contents. You know, you can really stay within the composite industry, but really like go really left to right and tackling some very important topics. So for me, I don't think there are so many industries where people can make an impact at that level for future generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcy.
So I get really excited when I hear this kind of discussion because it is an exciting industry. And I think that women in particular, to attract more women into the industry, we have an opportunity to really be the ambassadors for the composites industry, which is a unique role that we can fill as women who have successful careers, who are excited about what we're doing. And I think it's up to us to get out there and spread the word. Me personally, if I'm asked to speak at a high school career day, I go in there and talk about it. I'm not an engineer. I am a marketing professional, but we need those people too. When I sit around and hear about, we need PR campaigns for our industry, and we need engineers, and we need young women, young people. I'm even excited just to be an ambassador for young people to come into our industry, because we need young people to figure out how to take those wind blades that are bringing clean energy to the world. When their life is done, how can we recycle those to make something else? So there's the whole sustainability issue, that if we can encourage young people to go into that part of engineering, how exciting would that be? And here in the States, one thing we've done so women can have a voice and affect the industry and make an impact is we've created a group called Women in the Composites Industry, where we get together and we talk about things that we can do to go out there and be advocates for this great, exciting industry that we're working in. Part of the responsibility is on us. We know we have a unique voice, and we know that we work in a great and exciting industry. So we need to encourage other women like ourselves to go out there and talk about it and really be advocates for it.
How do women get involved in that, Marcy? Because that does sound, that sounds like something people who are generally listening to this and interested in the topic, over in the States, how do they get involved with what you're doing?
You can go to our website, compositeswomen.com, or you can send me an email at marcy.offner@compositesone.com, and I will sign you up. We are open to women in both all over the world. We have international interests as well, and it's really becoming more and more exciting. And it's a new group and it's growing, so we need voices and experience. And we love having engineers and commercial folks and shop workers. We have it all. So we would encourage women to seek us out. And we'll actually be walking around JEC too, so you never know. You might see someone with a Women in Composites Industry badge button walking around. So look forward to.
Claire, did you have something to add? Sorry.
I can't remember. I was thinking something with Marcy, and then I got so engrossed in what you were talking about. I just completely forgot. I've just written down compositeswomen.com, and I'll
well, there you go. You can be the next ambassador.
Yeah. I think I will say something actually. I think, we talk about talking to school children and within our industries, but it's also important to be seen within your own community. I think, people are often quite surprised. I get quite involved in a lot of music, and I tell people what I do for a living, and they're quite surprised because they've never met anybody who works in space and composites and things like that. So you think actually it's sort of normalizing that career path, especially for women. I think that's important as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there is also, like at Owens Corning, for example, there is truly a commitment to attract women, and it starts with open job. When we have open job and when we start interviewing, we really commit to have gender diverse panel of candidates, and I will be slowing down the process if I don't have as many women as men really as a candidate, because that starts with that. Sometimes it's a little bit like more challenging really to have candidates, but let us be demanding, and when we are demanding, then we have good resume, and then when we interview and those candidates, female or male, see that there are women in the composite, in the company, that also makes a difference, because people have no female as a role model, not only like interviewing in front of male. So I think things are changing, evolving, because for sure to be ambassador, as Marty said, is so important to be in contact with early career female, but also to ensure when we host really like interview some female, they have opportunity to interact with also like gender counterparts. And if, just having male in front of them during the interview is not a good path.
That actually brings us quite nicely onto my next question, which is who are your role models, growing up? And I suppose by growing up, I don't just mean, when you're at school, perhaps, it's a later influence, but how did they influence your decision to go into engineering? And you can answer that first if you like, because it's kind of followed on.
So unfortunately, I guess 30 years ago, joined Eastman Chemical, and then Owens Corning, I didn't have any female role model because there was no female in the leadership, neither as a manager. But I was fortunate to have really on the roll, 3 leaders, male leaders that were really like almost sponsor or coach for me, like guiding me about what to do, what behavior, what is the right behavior for some really meetings. So now it's a little bit different. So I try, whenever possible, really to host early career. I'm mentoring plenty of female at Owens Corning and outside my job. So it's important. It's almost like the ambassador role. How could we do it today, even so we didn't have this opportunity 20, 30 years ago? Sue, did you have the same really experience when you start working?
Yeah, so we've probably similar sort of generation, aren't we? I don't think I had any female role models. My chemistry teacher at school was male. That really was the one that inspired me to go into chemistry in the first place. But I have to say, along my career, I have met some absolutely amazing, inspirational women in the sector, and being able to work alongside those individuals has been really challenged me in terms of developing my own capability and pushing me outside my comfort zone, but also it's been very exciting. It's been a group. I remember once at one JEC there were 3 of us that had kind of met together, and we got great ideas to how we were going to move forward for the UK composites industry, and we were 3 women, and it was just one of the best moments, actually, I have to say, of a JEC experience, because one, we all congratulated each other the fact that we were all women, but actually we had such a drive to move forward on what we were talking about and develop things. So I think it's the women that I've met along the way that have inspired me to remain in the sector, because that's also a thing that we need to look at as well, is keeping people in the sector, even whether they're male or female, but keeping people within the industry and helping them to develop new skills and diversify and move as technology moves. But yeah, I think growing up, not so much the female role models, but certainly once I was in the industry, working alongside some really strong, powerful, intelligent, driven women has been absolutely inspirational.
Are there any of those that you feel that could do with some recognition right here, right now?
Well, one that springs to mind is Dr. Faye Smith, OBE. She was recognised for her contribution to the UK composites industry. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working alongside Faye for a number of years now. Several of you around the table already today. We've worked together for a long time. But there's a number in the industry, and I think things are changing. I think we are seeing more women coming through, and I think the youngsters coming up, if they're interested in science, they don't think about whether they're male or female. They just go into it. I think the challenge we have is attracting the youngsters into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, that takes us back full circle to where we spoke earlier about the skills.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Claire? Any role models?
Well, again, I don't think I think I sort of ended up in engineering rather than thinking very young that I wanted to be an engineer. But certainly once I started work, when I was in Airbus Defence and Space, I remember looking up to a lady called Margaret Fowler, who was a production engineer. And I also worked a lot with Dr. Alice Murphin, who was sort of senior to me as a materials engineer. And I think also that, obviously we're all quite outgoing, and you've noticed who we are and invited us to this podcast, but engineering is not about just exciting things. It's also about very methodical and meticulous individuals and making sure the work gets done. We do want the introverts who don't mind sitting behind a FEA analysis screen all day, enjoy that. They don't have to be out there talking to people all the time. And I think one of my worries, especially being much more connected to the space industry these days, is the excitement of that industry is so sold and people love it and they want to be a part of it. But actually, we need everyone in the spectrum. We do need the ambassadors for the industry, but we also need the hard workers, the neat freaks who are going to make sure that everything is documented very well and meticulous and conscientious workers. So I think we've got to appeal to a broad spectrum of people, and I've admired those skills in other people because maybe I'm not such a detail person myself, more of a big picture thinker, but we need both. So how do you get that message out there to all these different people?
Marcy, do you have anything to add on role models?
So it's kind of interesting because my role models have not been women, they've been men, who have made me realize that no job is more important than the other job. We all have a contribution to make and an opportunity to make an impact. Here at Composites One, my role models have been our CEO, Steve Demlow, and our president, Leon Garifalis. They really have given me the opportunity to use my skills and use my voice, and I always will appreciate that. My real role model is my mother, who told me to not take any guff from anyone, male or female, and to just go out there and get what I want. And so I owe it all to her. She's sort of made me given me my strength in many ways, not just professionally, but personally. So I think you find role models where you look for them. You don't have to be a woman looking for a woman role model. Just look for someone who espouses the values that you have, and you will be successful if you follow that type of person.
I'm going to come up this as a little bit of a side question now, really, just out of something I've noticed from experience. I think it's well documented that when it comes to applying for jobs, if a man sees a job advert and he says, I can do 10% of that, he'll apply. Whereas a woman will see the same job, go, I can only do 90% of that, I'm not good enough. We found as a business before, we put the same job up with two different job descriptions, and with one job description, we get a huge amount more women. Another one, you make it sound a bit more technical, and the amount of women who apply plummets. Do we need to start looking at the psychology of job descriptions and job applications we put out there? Anyone?
So you're talking about classic A/B marketing right now, where you're testing the market and trying to see what attracts one group over the other. I do think that what appeals to a woman might be different than what appeals to a man, just by the nature of who we are. But I also think that it goes back to that old PR thing, that we shouldn't have to do that, right? We should be able to make the job as appealing to both women and men and want them to come into our industry and into jobs in our industry because it is an exciting industry. So I think there's a little bit of both. I would hate to think that we become that way, that we have to market separately to one group over the other to get them to come into our industry. I think that would be to me, that sort of seems like a step back.
I don't think it's so much that. I think it's more a case that I tend to find women need to have a bit more confidence in what they're doing to apply for a job than a man generally would. Men tend to be a bit more chances, should we say. So I think we need to be careful how we put the job descriptions out there to not put women off rather than to attract women over men, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I don't know if I agree with you, but just being a woman, I don't know. I mean, I think certainly, maternity leave, child care, flexibility, all those things are important to women, but I think that they're becoming more important to men too. I think we're evolving as a society. So yes, I think that there are things that appeal to one group over the other, but we want to be careful not to separate us too much, because isn't that what we're talking about today? That we have a voice and we are equal and we are just as intelligent and just as capable. And I don't know, I guess I just look at it differently. I want the best applicant for the job. When someone applies for a job to come work on my team, I want the best one. I don't care if they're a woman or a man. And I highlight all of our great benefits to try to attract them and, hope that they resonate, with that person's individual need. Because what's good for a 25-year-old woman is different than what's good for a 45-year-old woman. So you have to kind of be careful to, in my opinion, not saying you're wrong, just in my opinion, to stereotype or pigeonhole, I guess, maybe is a better word.
I'm happy to be told I'm wrong in this situation. I mean, I'm far from the expert when it comes to this, am I?
Well, does anyone else have anything they want to add on Marty's answer there? No hands are going up. So I'm going to take us on. I realise that we've kept you all away from your day jobs for quite some time, but I'm just going to end with one question for each of you, which is to any young female wannabe engineers out there. Is there anything you want to say to them? Are you working on any projects that you want to tell them about that would really excite them? What would you say? And I'll go to you, Sue, first.
Okay, I'd say go for it. Believe in yourself. You can do it. Never doubt yourself just because you're female. Because actually, I think 5 out of the 6 of us on this call would probably agree that females are actually the stronger sex, and potentially more capable. We're more adaptable, I think, as a sex as well. We're generally able to adapt to changing environments. But I just say, just go for it. Believe in yourself. Give it a go. Try it. If you don't like it, then you can change. But I'd say that to anybody. Have a go at something and see what you think. And you'll probably astound yourself at how good you are.
Oh, Sue, how emotional. Moving on quickly, Claire.
I feel a bit overwhelmed. I know that's great advice, and I think do you know what, I've been called or gone back into my university to speak to graduates who obviously have already chosen engineering, and do you know what they asked me? How can I get a job? And actually, it's a great career because it's very interesting. There's huge diversity within the composites industry. Within one company, you can do so many different roles. I moved from engineering into more of a sales role. Within the sales role, I've traveled all over the world. I've seen industries across Europe, Japan, China. I've been to Russia. There's just, once you're in the industry, there are so many other directions you can take. So you will find something for you. But also, you're pretty likely to have a good career for life in composites.
Yeah, good point. Marcy?
So I think I would tell young women coming into the composites industry to go in confidently, sure of what your skills are, use your voice, be respectful of those who have more experience than you, but use your voice. And if at any time you feel like you're not being heard, doesn't mean you're always right, but if you feel like you're not being heard, then it isn't the right place for you to work. And there's a lot of great companies in our industry. Go out and find the place and the culture where your voice is heard and where you feel of value. I think that's great advice for any young person really starting their career, but in particular for young women, it's important to go in don't be so conscious of the fact that you're a woman. Just be conscious of the fact that you have an opinion, that you have skills, and you have a voice, and you can use them, and you'll find the right place to do that.
Thanks, Marcy. And do you have anything to add?
Yes, so I will tell our early career female engineer or workers that they are all very capable. So trust on yourself and don't limit yourself. You can work everywhere. Just don't limit yourself would be my simple message.
And on that lovely note from all of you, thank you so much for joining us and for giving such nice advice at the end there. And I think, you're all right. And if there's anything that we can do, like you say, to encourage not just female, but any engineers into the composites industry, then I absolutely believe, having sat and spoke to you all for the last hour, that you guys are there shining the light. So thank you very, very much for joining us. And, say that on behalf of myself and Material Evolution, but also on behalf of JEC, and hopefully see you all there in 8 weeks' time. Thank you.
I'll say that every single one of you was brilliant today, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
All right, super. We'll see you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes,